Graham Alexander, Professor of Herpetology at the University of Witwatersrand, joins us to chat further. Prof. Graham, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us on the SABC at this hour.
Good afternoon, Liesl.
Following that package and that story, perhaps you could weigh in on some of the most common misconceptions about snakes.
Well, the most obvious one that strikes me in relation to the patterns that we're seeing currently is that people normally associate snakes, because they're reptiles, being much more active when the weather is warm. Now, yes, when the weather is cold, snakes are less active, but in Africa, there are many times when snakes cannot actually be active because it gets too hot. So most snakes select a temperature of about 32 degrees. And so if you're sitting in the Kalahari and the surface temperature is 40 degrees, the snakes have to go underground and they can't be active. Having said that, at low temperatures, snakes aren't able to digest their food below about 20 degrees body temperature. And so it's risky for them to feed during the winter period. And so this burst of activity that we're seeing now with snakes has more to do with snakes trying to get a last meal in before the winter sets in. And we normally get a peak in activity either in March or maybe the first week of April. And it's really snakes looking for their last meal before they have to go into brumation, which most people think of as hibernation.
Well, speaking about that,
they won't feed right through the... Yes, sorry?
No, well, thank you for setting that context, because speaking about that peak in activity, at this time of the year, what are some of the common types of snakes to occur in the area? What are the role of snakes also in the environment at large?
Okay, so we often associate the most common snakes with the ones that are most obvious. So many of the smaller, innocuous, harmless snakes you don't see around so much because, you know, they're more secretive and cryptic than if we see, for example, puff adders or pythons or cobras, as I was seeing in your visuals now. So just about all species go through this pre-winter last feeding behavioral pattern. But also harmless snakes like house snakes and many of the fossorial species that live underground will be doing exactly the same thing. The one thing that we should just know about puff adders in this part of the world as being a little different is that they have their mating season into the autumn and the first half of winter. And so during this period, males are out looking for females, and so they become a lot more obvious, and people are surprised to find snakes out at this time of the year. But certainly they wouldn't be feeding then. They are just trying to find females so that they can mate, and then the females would drop their young in sort of January or so.
Okay, well, thank you for touching on that, because you've spoken to the pre-winter behavioral patterns, but I also actually wanted to look at how long the phenomenon lasts, given that mating season occurs. And I was reading about how female snakes leave a trail of pheromones to attract the male snakes. And so in view of that, perhaps we could look at some of the do's and don'ts when encountering a snake. I mean, the question about whether all snake encounters end up in a snake bite is obviously, it's not 100%. So what should people be doing if they do encounter a snake?
So the first do would be really appreciate what you're seeing, because they are amazing predators, and we can have a bit of a chat about how important they are in controlling pest species. But you must understand that snakes aren't out to bite you. They bite really only as self-defense if they're feeling threatened. So, for example, if you just remain calm and you back off slowly from a snake, there's almost no chance that the snake is going to try and attack or bite you. Even species like black mambas. In all my encounters with black mambas, really it's just that they become a bit nervous when they get cornered if you're trying to catch them. But there's certainly not a case of them attacking you as a human. They're just trying to defend themselves. So really, it's just, you know, keeping your distance. So long as you're a couple of meters away from them and you can back up really easily, and you're totally safe in doing that. If you suddenly encounter one and you're very close, possibly keeping still for a moment is a good thing, because snakes' eyesight is really attuned for movement. But really, under most circumstances, if you back off, you're going to be totally safe.
Prof. Graham, what about protecting pets who often get bitten by snakes, especially dogs? How do we go about doing that? Also, looking at the role of snakes in the production of antivenom as well.
Yes, well, in the case of dogs, it's really the dogs that are at fault trying to attack the snake. And so the snake's doing exactly the same thing as you can expect if a person attacks it. It will defend itself. And a lot of dogs are bitten by snakes in South Africa. For example, boomslang bites are far more numerous in dogs than they are in people. So really, in the case of dogs, if you have an intelligent dog, you probably could train it to avoid messing around with a snake, or otherwise just make sure that at those times of the year when snakes are more active, you keep your dogs restricted to areas where they're unlikely to meet snakes. So normally, if a snake has an encounter with a dog, it ends badly for both the dog and the snake. So keeping them apart is probably the best policy.
Well, Prof, thank you for your time on the SABC.
You also asked about...
Yes, I did actually also ask about antivenom at large. Just as we wrap up, walk us through what that also entails in relation to snakes.
So the snake venom is used in the production of anti-snakebite serum in South Africa. There are more than one method of producing treatment for snake bites, but the fundamental normal treatment in South Africa at the moment, although things are starting to change now, is to extract venom from a snake, inject it into a horse, make the horse immune to the effects of the venom, draw the horse's blood, spin out the serum, and that's why it's called anti-snakebite serum, because it's the serum from the horse's blood. The problem with this technique is that a large percentage of the population are actually allergic. They react badly to having serum injected into them. And for example, I myself am highly sensitive to anti-snakebite serum. And when it was used on me after a bite, it stopped my heart in something like 30 seconds. So I went into complete anaphylaxis. So I can't use the normal serum in South Africa if I got bitten by a snake. You'd have to just treat me symptomatically.